Welcome to Studying Law Around the World. I'm Claudio Klaus. In each episode, I talk with lawyers, law students, and professors from different parts of the world to talk about legal education, careers, and what the profession looks like in real life. We talk about the hard parts, the surprises, and the decisions that shaped their paths. Whether you're planning to study abroad, thinking about working in another legal system, or just curious about how law works around the world, this podcast is for you. This episode of Studying Law Around the World is proudly sponsored by ITL Prep from Emond Exam Prep, the comprehensive resource designed specifically for internationally trained lawyers preparing for the NCA exams. We understand that the NCA accreditation journey can feel overwhelming. You can face many obstacles getting to success. Courses that cost too much, offer too little, or leave you more confused than when you started. That's why Emond Exam Prep created ITL Prep, a smarter, more reliable way to succeed. Our module-based self-study courses and expert-led review sessions are designed by actual law professors, many of whom are ITLs themselves or teach at international law schools. They know the NCA process, they understand your journey, and they've built these courses to guide you clearly through the NCA syllabi, helping you gain the understanding you need to be at your best for success on your exams. With ITL Prep, you'll gain confidence and clarity, whether it's foundational concepts or you're tackling specialized Canadian law topics. It's affordable, it's flexible, it's built with you in mind. And right now, we're offering something special. As an exclusive offer for the Studying Law Around the World podcast listeners, ITL Prep is offering 50% off all courses for the first 50 purchases. Simply use the promo code ITL50 at checkout. Casebooks and other resources must be purchased separately. Visit emond.ca today, that's EMOND.ca, and use promo code ITL50 to claim your 50% discount on NCA exam preparation courses.
So many of the guests on this podcast have talked about how important it is to have strong writing skills as a lawyer. It's true, written communication is essential in this profession, but it can also be one of the trickiest skills to master. If you find your writing feels a bit clunky, or you're getting a lot of edits on your work, or perhaps you're breaking into an English-speaking jurisdiction for the first time, Grammatica International can help. I'm Rebecca Lockwood, the lawyer, mediator, and educator behind Grammatica, and we help lawyers and law students to write more sharply, speak more clearly, and advance their careers with group training and one-on-one skills coaching designed just for legal professionals. I have worked with so many lawyers like you who are exceptionally smart, qualified, and capable, but need a bit of guidance to stand out in a competitive legal market. And I get it myself, having lived and worked in 5 countries during my 17 years in law and education. Whether you're looking to sharpen your writing skills generally, refresh your CV, or draft an application for a law program, Grammatica can help. Visit grammatica.co to learn more.
Today I have the opportunity to talk with Tomas Ballarati. He is an Argentinian and American lawyer. He has had quite the journey studying in Córdoba and George Mason University in the US, and now is both licensed in Argentina and California. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Amazing. And to start off our episode, Tomas, could you start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. So, I was born and raised in Argentina, in Córdoba. It's a city with a very strong legal tradition. There's a lot of lawyers. There's one of the oldest law schools in the whole of the Americas. I think it's like the 4th or the 5th oldest law school. Older than Harvard even. And there's a very strong presence of law firms and international law corporations. So eventually when I turned 18, I went to college. I went to university there. I studied law. I got my JD over there. And then, ultimately my path took me wanted to expand to practice in the US. So I went ahead and did an LL.M in George Mason in Virginia in the US. And I've been working with a California based law firm. And that's so far what I've been doing.
Fantastic. And I love that you already mentioned a little bit about your path in law and also why eventually you went to the US. But I'd love to hear a little bit about, these experiences. And also, now that you're licensed to practice in both countries, if you could share with us a little bit of the challenges and the rewarding parts of building this practice that goes across borders.
So, well, you know, I guess it all started when I went to law school in Argentina. It was, like I said, sort of a natural choice because of the strong presence of law firms and this particular college that has a very long-standing legal tradition. Sort of at the beginning, I sort of didn't know. I guess, like many students, I wasn't sure exactly what area of law I wanted to pursue. I think, many law students going to law school and they just, probably had a lawyer in their family or they watched a lot of lawyer movies and they just found it, intriguing and they went to law school, but they didn't really know much. And I think that's kind of where I was going. But then, as I take class after class after class, you start shaping what you like. And I found myself sort of gravitating towards subjects like international law or court law. And then, got a job right up law school. Well, as soon as I started as soon as I started studying, on my first year of law school, I got a job and I would do, sort of both things simultaneously. And, the job that I do, it had a very strong component on corp. And so that kind of put me in a position where I started dealing with a lot of companies and a lot of corporate clients. And, I started realizing, well, things are not like as strictly local as I had expected because I went into law school with the understanding that many people have, which is, well, laws change from different jurisdictions. If you go to law school in Córdoba, well, you're going to practice in Córdoba. You're going to go to law school in, you know, Toronto. And I quickly learned that was not the case. I learned that these companies, they operate all around the world and they need lawyers that can help them sort of navigate to whatever business they're gonna do, whether it's in the US or in Europe or in South America. So, I eventually graduated from law school and I kept working with these companies and I started working with American clients. And, the more I worked with them, the more I realized I sort of had to take a leap of faith and, try myself studying law in the US as well. So I enrolled in an LL.M. in George Mason University, that's in Virginia. And after I passed my classes and I got my degree, then I sat for the bar exam in California and I passed it. And I'm just now finalizing the last steps to get my license. And hopefully soon I will get that. And in the meantime, I've been working with, other colleagues that are already licensed and we're advising clients in corporate matters mainly between these two jurisdictions, but sometimes, not just Argentina and the US, but other countries. And so I'm starting to build this, career where, these corporate clients, there is so much need of these lawyers that have licenses in both countries, which is very rare, and I'm trying to, help other people, help other students as well. I'm counseling some student organizations on how they can do the same thing that I get and, try to get their licenses across the different jurisdictions because it is necessary. I've been seeing that, very often that these companies, they need attorneys that have licenses and they get practice in both jurisdictions. And that's very, very uncommon. Not many people do it either because they think it's too difficult or because it is expensive. It is true that it's expensive, but be that as it may, it's necessary. And I think we should be pushing for more young lawyers to go ahead and do that.
Fantastic. And you've been in the same corporation for a couple of years now, and I'd love to hear a little bit about, what a typical day looks like for you, and also what are some of the skills that you rely the most on that role?
Sure. Yes, I work with very closely with a corporation in Southern California, with a law firm in Southern California. And I guess the short answer to your question is that, there are no 2 days that look the same. The work is very volatile in a way, and it changes a lot. What I do varies. We have 4 departments. I oversee 4 departments. We have about 15 people working there at this point. And so a lot of what I do is management. Management of all the workload, the cases that we do for our clients, and also the people that work on those cases. So I have, my official title, I guess, would be senior case manager. And that involves, like I said, both working the cases themselves and working with the people to, help them work their own case. So I supervise all those big team members, and I make sure the cases move forward. I, you know, help people strategize how to move ahead and work their own cases. And, I help, I review the work, I review their writings, their pleadings, their pleas. I sit down with the clients, I meet with the clients. But again, like no 2 days look the same. Some days I am working mostly on bleedings and briefings that need to go out, motions or the like, or some other days I'm just, strategizing or sitting down with clients and planning ahead the next 6 months, the 12 months, for operations, right? I guess the skills I rely on most are probably, um, like I said, management. There's a lot of leadership there. Part of my job is to lead these people that often are young or younger than me, and they are new in working these sort of cases. Sometimes they need some guidance, some pointers on how to do that. I learned that you cannot do everything yourself. I try to do that, and that's often a recipe for disaster. You have to delegate and you have to put them in a position where they can do it. It's not about, "Oh, I want to do as much as I can. I want to be the greatest there." It's about, effectiveness and sharing the workload so that we can be efficient and get things out as soon as possible on the best way possible. So you need to sort of empower your teammates and set some expectations, clear expectations, and just make the decisions on how to get there, how to go about achieving whatever goal the client has set out to achieve. So I think I actually love this job and I love the role that I have because it sort of forced me to grow beyond just being a lawyer, a case lawyer, which there's nothing wrong to it. But, sometimes lawyers fail to understand that there's more to being a lawyer than just working a case, right? There's a lot of management and strategizing and helping your firm, you know, stay alive, right? There's a lot of that as well. So I think that job has to be really taken me to a position where I can develop these skills that are not necessarily so common out there. So I'm very happy to have had that opportunity.
That's amazing. If I may ask you about the cross-border practice, you mentioned first that sometimes corporations are not as local as they seem and all of that. And how do you balance, these independent projects that you have with your firm work? And also, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of the areas that you find yourself working more and more frequently?
Yeah. So I guess that's a fair point because, balance is, you know, quite key in when you're working for a corporation and at the same time have your own independent practice. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of clarity, setting clear boundaries and expectations for every client that they know that, well, you're not their only client and um, you have a lot on your hands and you need to prioritize and strategize as well. At the firm, I mostly focus on the firm's work, but in my independence practice, I take on projects that sort of align directly with this cross-border practice that I'm building. And obviously, they do not conflict with the firm because the firm does mostly local work. So when I do my independence practice, most often the clients come to me, for business formation in the US or for contracts between jurisdictions, compliance. It's also very common to see out there. So it's mostly those issues of immigration and tax considerations come into play as well. Obviously, I guess in the root of all of this, it's compliance, right? So they want to set up uh, a corporation over there in the US and they want to do business in the US or they want to invest in other US companies and they want to do different sort of transactions. And for that, they need some sort of corporate entity structure. And they also need to understand what are my tax obligations? Where do I pay taxes? Do I pay taxes in both jurisdictions? How much? And there are treaties involved. And obviously, sometimes they want to send people to the US to do business, and there's immigration for management and executives, right? So those are kind of the hot topics, I guess. They want to draft their contracts to make sure that they're not, in a tight spot in the event of a dispute. Are they going to do arbitration or are they going to do submit themselves to jurisdiction in the US? Those are, I think, the hot topics: business formation, clerks, and mostly compliance with immigration and tax considerations. But I try to give my clients some peace of mind. When you're dealing with two different countries and their laws, they can be very different. I have to say that most of the Western world is very similar. The procedures may change. Certainly they do. Even the laws change quite a bit. But culturally, they're very similar, and there will be some similarities. So I often tell that to my clients to make them feel like, hey, shouldn't be so overwhelming. There will be some overlap. And at the end of the day, if you just want to do business and people want to do business with you, this shouldn't be rocket science, right? And my job is mostly to guide them to anticipate their problems and try to make the process, as smooth as possible.
That's outstanding. So I also wanted to ask, I noticed that on LinkedIn you run a newsletter and publish some articles on cross-border law and how to go about it. And I was curious to know, how did you decide to share some of your insights online, and how has writing that also helped you with your career and also, shaped your connections and all of that?
You're right. I guess at first I started publishing because I sort of wanted to clarify my own thoughts, almost as if I was doing like my own journal. Like, I had some following in LinkedIn, and I just share some insights, some lessons that I learned. Again, because I felt a lot of people were contacting me directly because they have seen that I have gone to school in the US and taken the bar exam, and that felt to many people very intriguing and very attractive. And so I felt, like, well, I can, start publishing maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, and I start explaining this to some people and show them, hey, it's not impossible. You don't have to be a millionaire. I'm certainly not. And you could do it at a reasonable budget and expand your practice and get licensed in multiple jurisdictions. It just takes a lot of resilience and a lot of hard work, but it can pay off. So I started publishing mostly for those reasons. Then I continued publishing also to show that, hey, these things that people talk about, compliance between jurisdictions or contracts or incorporating in a different country, again, it's not rocket science. And many people should be doing it, not just, those few who took a leap of faith. So I started publishing to sort of spread the word and trying to encourage people to do it. And I found, this newsletter to be resonating with a lot of people, just not just lawyers, but also like business people and students. They've been contacting me and they've been asking questions prior, and we've been having calls. And uh, obviously, I'm very busy actually, but I always try to find time to have calls and to discuss their questions and try to help them. So I keep on publishing this newsletter. It goes out every week. It sort of has become a platform to share some practical advice, reflections on my own and personal experience about working across borders. And I hope that, if I keep publishing, it'll open doors for other people, that they'll see that this is possible. And, people can feel free to reach out because, if they feel they know me through my writing, well, then they're invited to talk to me and ask whatever questions they have. And to the extent that I can, I'll help them out. And at the same time, I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm certainly enjoying writing. I always have since I was a very little kid. I used to write little novels and books, but then obviously now I'm writing about legal stuff, right? That's what I'm doing. But, and not just the personal satisfaction of writing that I do enjoy quite a bit, but also people see me out there and they are inviting me to conferences, their panels, and wouldn't you guess it, even a podcast. So yeah, I'm very happy I've been publishing, and I'll be doing that hopefully consistently over the next couple of years.
Fantastic. And if I may ask you, before we go forward to another subject, can you tell our listeners of how they could find your newsletter and how they could subscribe to it in case they're interested?
Yes. So my newsletter is called Cross Border Insights. It's under my LinkedIn profile. So if people search my name, you'll probably pop up first thing on my profile. And you can also search my name. It's Cross Border Insights.
Fantastic. Thomas, as we get to the end of this episode, I also wanted to ask you something that I've been asking every guest that comes to the podcast. And that is, what kind of advice would you give to law students or young lawyers who are just, starting out in the field now, but also to those who are considering studying or practicing law abroad?
Yeah. So, well, there's certainly a lot of advice that I can give. I keep receiving advice. I'm sure I'm going to keep receiving advice myself for the next 30, 40, 50 years. But as far as what I can tell them right now, I think my two main pieces of advice would be first, invest in yourself, study, devote time to studying languages. If you want to do a cross-border practices, language, it's essential. You cannot have a cross-border practice if you don't speak good English. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a native speaker, but good enough to have a conversation, right? Good enough so that people feel comfortable talking to you. So if it's in the US or Canada, then English has to be, your essential language. Now, English is probably the business language out there in the world, even if you're going to Asia or Europe. So certainly I would tell them to study English, but they can study Portuguese or French or Mandarin. Whatever languages they learn, you'll certainly help them. You'll multiply their opportunities. And the second one, and probably the most important one, if anything, is don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Yes, it's not easy to study law abroad. It's not easy to set up a cross-border practice, but it pays off. You'll pay off in kind. You need to study. You need to work. If you have a chance to head out and then spend a semester abroad or take a master's degree abroad, or if you can take a job and spend a few months, even a couple of years abroad, then those things are going to help you. It's going to open your mind to new opportunities, to new people, to new ways of life. And it's certainly going to give you those few elements that you need if you're going to be working with clients who do business through multiple jurisdictions. You cannot be stuck with your own mindset of your local culture and your local laws. Things are very different when you cross borders. So certainly, take a leap of faith, step outside of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid. Just, have at it. You're going to land on your feet. If you plan ahead, if you're organized, you're going to land on your feet. Things are going to work out. So certainly those two, I guess I could also mention if you want to be a lawyer, most of it involves networking. Now, it's certainly not the only thing. Some people have the misconception that, oh, I'm going to network and that's going to do it for me. That's not really quite like that, but it certainly helps. So try to build networks early, join associations. You can join your local attorneys association, or if you do business in the US, you can join the American Bar Association. You can go to conference. You can connect with other lawyers. Don't be afraid of just texting them, emailing them. Say, hey, I just saw you on this conference, or I just saw your LinkedIn profile. I just want to connect. I want to talk. I want to pick your brain. Why not? I mean, if they're too busy, well, they'll just say no. So what? I mean, what's the harm in doing that, right? So I think those are some of the insights I will share with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those. To wrap up today's episode, I also wanted to ask you, where do you see your practice heading in the next few years? And also you see that there's some areas of cross-border work that you think will grow in importance as well as we move forward.
Well, I kind of see myself heading in two big directions. I guess one of them is I want to continue growing my practice, my independent practice, and really become like the go-to lawyer for these companies that need to do business abroad and they need to set up a corporate entity or get advice on compliance and tax issues. So I really want to do that, especially between Argentina and the US, which is where I come from, where I legally trained and where I feel most comfortable. Certainly would be open minded to expanding that as well. And, I want to publish more. I want to connect with clients and, not just clients in Argentina, US, but wherever they might be and they may need help with those jurisdictions. And I guess the other is I would like to focus on areas that I think are growing very rapidly. And that goes to kind of your second question. I mean, I'm not falling to the cliche of saying technology and AI, but it is that those areas are growing quite fast and, in a way, dangerously fast because people are not even able to keep up with all the changes that are out there. So I want to try to go into that technology compliance and try to stay ahead of the game and be able to help my clients navigate those issues as well. They're growing so fast, not just for lawyers, but for even the people who work on those fields, even the people in AI or the tech startups. They are having a hard time catching up. So if I can help them, then I'll certainly do that. And I guess that's also where I see myself going.
Amazing. Well, once again, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast and share some of your insights Much appreciated, and wishing you all the best in your career and looking forward to seeing what comes up next.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having this podcast. I've been listening to it for few months now, and uh, I always found it very intriguing and very instructive. And thank you for everyone who shows up at this show and contributes. I think their advice can be very helpful to some people who are getting started. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I hope to be in touch in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.